The Lifestyle Show, presented by Selena Mackenzie.
Now, our first guest has written the first complete investigative account of the 2018 murder of American cyclists Jay Austen and Lauren Gagan on the Pamir Highway. It was a cycling adventure and around-the-road trip that sadly ended in a terrorist attack. He's here to tell us more. Welcome, author William Elliott Hazelgrove.
Oh, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Before we go into who Jay and Lauren were, where is the Pamir Highway then?
It's in Tajikistan, in Central Asia, and very close to Afghanistan, and is a cycling destination for cyclists from all over the world, actually, because it's beautiful. It goes up to 14,000 feet, and this was sort of their goal was to get there and cycle the mountains of the Pamir Highway, which is called also the Roof of the World. And that goes to the title, Evil on the Roof of the World, because not to get ahead of ourselves, Jay's whole thing was, when undertaking this around the world bike trip, was that evil did not exist. And he blogged about this. And I put the book together from their blogs, Instagram posts, interviews. But this was the central thesis of his, that he thought, human evil was just a fabrication. The people were basically good.
I mean, it's a great way to think about life and to think about the world, but it's not very sensible, is it? And I'm guessing going to that sort of place could offer dangers. Did they look into the dangers that there could be?
Yes, they did. And so they took off in 2017 and they ended up in Tajikistan after a year in 2018. And they started off in Africa and then went through Europe and then ended up in Central Asia. And they checked the State Department website, which said basically that it was fine. There were no warnings at all. After the attack, a lot of people online said they were naive to go there and, to think they were entitled millennials. They were both Georgetown graduates in Washington, worked for the government, had great jobs. And, they threw that all aside, so many people do when they undertake something like this, to sort of live this different kind of life. And they originally planned to go 4 years on this bike trip around the world. And obviously they got as far as Tajikistan. But, Lauren, it was Jay Austen and Lauren Gagan. Lauren had a premonition that, something might happen. She had a lot of fear because when they were on their way there's a river and on the other side is Afghanistan, and they were looking across. And I interviewed a woman named Kim Potsma who survived the attack, and she said that Lauren was very afraid. That she felt a lot of fear. And another thing was too that they were biking a group of 7 cyclists. And, I think that they really stood out that way. There's a video I watched of them before the attack, and they were going through Tajikistan, and, they just sort of stood out, as Westerners and as, well-to-do Westerners. Tajikistan is very, very poor. Most people there are migrant workers in Russia. And so we had, the view of a lot of people, and certainly the ISIS operatives who saw them. Well, you had these rich Americans on a bike trip, and so they started to shadow them.
So ISIS claimed responsibility. Did you say there were 7 of them, and were there only Jay and Lauren that were taken, or were there others?
No, actually. A guy named Renee, which was Kim Potsma's husband, longtime partner, and Marcus Hummel were also slain. They're from the Netherlands. But Jay and Lauren, because they were, Georgetown graduates, highly educated Americans, they got all the press. This was covered around the world when it happened. NPR, New York Times, LA Times, CBS, ABC. And terrorists want publicity when something happens. And that was one reason, they targeted them. There was 5 ISIS terrorists who attacked them with a car and butcher knives up in the Pamir Mountains. And so there were 3 survivors of the attack. And again, I interviewed Kim Pottsville, who was great. She really gave me a lot of information that had not been revealed before.
Oh, shocking. I mean, you often hear of them being kidnapped first, don't you? But they literally killed them straight away.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they hit them with a Daewoo sedan. Well, what happened was they had stopped at a gas station to fill their water bottles, and this olive-skinned man came up to them and started asking them questions. And Kim said, he was very pushy. And he asked Jay, so where are you from? Where are you from? And Jay sort of played around, said he's from Russia, and then he said he's from the United States. And then he went right back to this white car and took off. So then they started biking, and they had come down out of the mountain, so it was pretty warm. And they were biking along, and so they came at them from behind in this sedan and started just hitting them, just sort of mowing them down with the car. And actually, at this point, if they had continued on, a lot of them might have survived. Because really, Kim Pottsville was hit, and she got right back up. She wasn't hurt at all. Jay and Lauren were hit squarely, so, they went down pretty fast. But it was really then they got out of the car with these, knives and attacks, and that's, that was really what killed the 4 of them. And, and then it was all over within probably 4 to 5 minutes. And nobody stopped their car, though, when it was happening. People just went right by. And, and then after they left, people stopped and started to help them.
And the woman who survived, did she, the poor blooming woman, I can't imagine, but she would have had to have told the authorities, let the friends and family know. I expect there was media coverage as well.
Oh, yeah. When she came back and so she went to the hospital, she found out her longtime partner had died. They had to smuggle her out of the country because she was the only surviving witness at this point. And so they put her into a safe house and then flew her out, I think, the next night to, make sure that, there was nobody could take revenge on her, try to eliminate her. And, there was quite a bit of media afterwards that, centered on her. And there was another woman named Marie Claire, but she did not, she went into shock, so she didn't really have any recollection of the event. And, this happens. But Kim was very clear-eyed about it and could tell me, exactly how it happened, what happened. And, when Jay and Lauren on this trip, they had a lot of close calls in different ways. 2 men stopped them with a car once, knocked them off their bikes. They had felt like they were being followed at times. 2 strange things happened. A radio crew came up to them in Tajikistan and wanted to interview them. Kim Pottsville, who's been on many, many trips, said, this had never happened to her before. And then there was a television crew, and again, they thought this was very odd. And then later, after the attack, they went through the terrorists' cell phones, and they found out that they had been tracking them for a few days and following them.
Wow. And what about the country's government? What did they have to say about it?
They quickly swung into action. They killed the 4 terrorists quickly, shot them down, but because they wouldn't give up. And then they put the leader Muhammad into jail. He was actually interviewed by the New York Times, where they said to him, why did you do this? Why would you do this? And he said, well, people are killing Muslims, and they're Christians, and that's how I saw them. Just no remorse at all. And then he died in prison within the year from a kidney complication of some sort. And so, really what it was they had been on this trip for over a year. They had wild experiences in Africa from being chased by elephants. Also, too, I'm a cyclist, and that's one reason I wrote the book. It's very hard to do what they did in terms of, you have to carry all your gear. Every night you have to camp. Your bike is loaded down. It doesn't go very fast. You're biking all day long. This is a very difficult trip. There was a man who did it in 1889 named Stevens, and he went on one of those big wheel bicycles called a farthing. And he didn't carry, Jay and Lauren had thousands of dollars worth of gear they brought with them. Just everything was top line. This guy went in 1889 with just like a satchel, but he carried with him a British Bulldog revolver that he used. And that's the one thing that Jay and Lauren did not have.
Presumably, this must have really affected the cycling communities.
Oh, yeah. A lot of people said, why would people do this? Why would people go into these third world countries that are, obviously dangerous? And, a lot of the, cyclists responded, well, they checked the sites, they did everything they were supposed to do, that it was just bad luck. And, the cyclists are a very tight community, and a lot of them wrote about, riding with Jay and Lauren before this, and, how open they were to people and how many people befriended them. And this is, if you read The Evil on the Roof of the World, you'll see that most of the book is about, the people who took them in, treated them great, gave them food. One night in Spain, they were on a road in a mountain. Their bikes broke down. They got caught in a snowstorm. They were freezing. This man came along in his van, picked them up, took them to his house, gave them food. And this also happened to them on Christmas, where they were pretty much looking for a place to camp. And, it's very difficult in the year 2025, 2026, or when they went 2018, to go camping all over the place. I mean, most places are pretty settled. And one thing they found was that, fences were blocking them. You couldn't just plop your tent down. The first night they camped in South Africa, they were at basically a rest stop. So it wasn't like the time of Hemingway, where, when they were in Africa, they were in the wilds. They were on highways, and also people in cars go very fast, and a lot of times they were almost hit. But again, if you go through the book and you read it, you'll see that, there was one act of kindness after another, which, for Jay, again, his thesis of, hey, evil is aberrational, sort of backed this up, that, he thought people were basically kind, and it was proven over and over, until it wasn't.
Yeah. It's always the good ones, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I know that you're a writer. I know you've written novels and non-fiction titles, but how did you become aware of Jay and Lauren? Is that because you're a cyclist yourself, you mentioned?
I was reading the New York Times in 2018 when this happened, and I read the story, and it struck me. I thought, why would they quit their jobs? They both had these great jobs. They had this great life in Georgetown, Washington, D.C., with all these friends, and just sort of this fantastic life, and throw it all over to go bike around the world. Now, I was intrigued by the biking, but also I was intrigued by, what were they looking for? And Jay was very much a zealot. He was a very organic guy. He lived in a tiny house, which is a very small home with a very small footprint. He's very progressive. to a fault probably. And he's sort of a zealot almost. You know, he didn't believe in, you know, he didn't believe in working 30 years, retiring. He believed living now. And he took a lot of trips by himself. He went across the country on a motorcycle. He went to Iceland. You know, he biked all over the place. So he was just that guy when he worked for HUD, you know, Housing Urban Development for the government. And he was the guy who would come in shorts and sandals and, you know, would ride his bike to work. And, you know, he just was a nonconformist, sort of like Jack Kerouac on the road. You know, these people who sort of take a different path. And this is very much Jay. And so Lauren worked at Georgetown in admissions. And so he had a lot of influence on her in terms of, you know, he introduced her to this sort of new way of life. And so, you know, off they went. And so I was fascinated with, you know, this sort of zealot, Jay, and also this crash of cultures that occurred in Tajikistan, where you had, you know, they spent more on a sleeping bag than most Tajikistans could make in a year, you know. And so, you know, what does that mean when somebody undertakes this to say, I'm going to live this different life, sort of live for today, carpe diem. And, you know, how does that work out, generally speaking, you know? And so Jay was never going back to his job. I think Lauren thought that she would, but he decided, I'm done with that. I'm done with this work life. He had some money in the bank. He lived very, very frugally. That was another thing. They spent very little money on this trip, you know, and it made it harder because, you know, and they weren't eating great. They wouldn't stay in hotels a lot of times when they couldn't find a camping spot. So, you know, so that's what intrigued me. That's how I followed the story for a couple of years, and it just sort of would pop up occasionally. And then finally, I wrote a proposal for the publisher and said, it's a very Into the Wild story of the Jay McCandless story, Chris McCandless. Very much same kind of story. This guy goes off the grid, goes into the wilds of Alaska, and then gets caught and dies in the wilderness. And, you know, who believed in this sort of, you know, life on the land, Jack Kerouac, or rather Jack London kind of life. So that struck me because I really do like Into the Wild. I think it's a great story. And so when I heard this, I thought, oh, this is sort of updated Into the Wild. And so that's why I pursued it. Yeah,
very sad story. Well, if you want to read more, the book is called Evil on the Roof of the World, A Cycling Trip That Ended in Terror. It's by William Elliott, Hazelgrove, who we're chatting to now. And for our listeners, we're selling it on our website, tre.radio. William, do you have a website as well if people want to find out more?
Oh, sure. WilliamHazelgrove.com, Hazelgrove History, BillHazelgrove.com. You can put any of that in there and I'll pop up.
Great stuff. Well, I thank you very much for your time and sharing the story with us today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.